Hi kids, my name is Inspector V with Northwest Fire District. Today we're going to talk about brain injury awareness. Did you know that you have a wrinkly, massive material that weighs about 3 pounds? 3 pounds is like a half gallon of milk, and it controls every single thing that you do every single day. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's right, we're talking about your brain. So today's lesson, we're going to be talking about how your brain works, the amazing things that it does. We're going to talk about what happens when you hurt your brain, and we're also going to talk about how to protect your brain. So let's get started. Did you know that your brain is more powerful and faster than any supercomputer out there? Really, it is, or smartphone. Your brain virtually has unlimited storage. Let me give you an example. Think about the most popular and most expensive smartphone out there, or computer for that fact, but we're talking smartphones right now. The one that I can think of has 512 gigabytes. 512 gigabytes is a massive amount of storage. It holds thousands and thousands of pictures, thousands of songs, and thousands of movies, and probably still has some left over. Your brain has 2.5 million gigabytes. Wow, who measured that? Really, who measured that? I think that's amazing. You also have 100 billion neurons in your brain. Now, neurons are little cells, little tiny, tiny cells, right? That's why it's 100 billion of them. And these neurons are messengers that go from your brain throughout your body. Okay? 100 billion. I want to know who counted that. It would take like 300 years to count 100 billion. It really would. Um, your brain also has 100,000 miles of blood vessels. 100,000 miles. Did someone lay this out and measure it from 1 mile to 100,000 miles? You know, these brain facts are just so cool. Really, it is. And the coolest one of all is the last one. The best workout for your brain is reading. Did you know that when you read, your brain becomes more intelligent? I really love reading, but I didn't know this, that it becomes more intelligent. So hey, let's open up those books and let's start reading. Your brain is amazing. Your brain enables you to think. Your brain enables you to learn. Your brain lets you be creative, not just drawing by singing or making things or becoming a scientist or something wonderful, but your brain enables you to do all that stuff. Also, your brain controls your emotions. Whether you're happy, mad, glad, sad, your brain controls all of this stuff. So cool. Your brain also controls how you blink. Imagine that. Your brain is controlling your blinking. I always thought when I blinked that maybe there was a little bit of dust in my eyes, but no, it's my brain saying blink, 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 blink. Your brain controls your breathing. Your brain allows you to breathe. Wow. And your brain controls your heartbeat. So far, don't you think your brain is a wonderful, wonderful thing to have? I do. But in order to understand more about your brain, let's talk about the parts of the brain because each part does something different. Okay? Now, let's look at the screen and you see this very colorful brain. And of course, our brain isn't that colorful. I wish it was, but it's not. So let's go over the parts. If you look at the red part, that is called the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is right here. Frontal lobe. Easy, right? Now the yellow part, the name, it looks like it says parietal, but it isn't. It's parietal. parietal lobe. Okay? So we have the frontal lobe, and now we have the parietal lobe. If you look at the blue in the blue shaded area, now that word's kind of difficult, right? You would think it's occipital or something, but no, it is occipital. So the OC says oc, so it's occipital lobe. Now right below that, in the tan area, is what we call the cerebellum. Okay, there's no lobe to it, it's just called the cerebellum. And this is how you pronounce it, cerebellum. Next to that is the spinal cord. So it's just simple to say, but it's part of the brain, so the spinal cord. Now, the lavender shaded area, the purple shaded area, as you can see, it's not called temporal lobe, it is called temporal lobe, okay? Temporal lobe. So let's go over those names again. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, cerebellum, spinal cord, and temporal lobe, okay? All right. So now you guys know the name of the lobes on the brain. Awesome. Wow. Look what these brain parts do. It's amazing. Your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe has your reasoning, your behavior, your memory, movement, intelligence, your personality is in your frontal lobe. Wow. Parietal lobe. It has intelligence and reasoning. It tells you what your left is and what your right side is, so you can learn from your left from your right. It tells you about sensation, your language, like speaking different languages, right? And your reading. That's why your intelligence is right there too, because your reading is in that area. Temporal lobe. It's your speech on how you say your words, your behavior, your hearing. Your hearing is in the temporal lobe. Your vision. Now, when it says vision, it doesn't mean like how you see, like you being able to see. It means by recognizing stuff that you see, okay? Your emotions are in your temporal lobe, and your long-term memory is in your temporal lobe. So that's stuff like your memories from what you did long ago, okay? Now, occipital lobe. That is where your sight is at. But look how far back it is from your head to where your front of your head for your eyes are at, right? That's pretty far. Now, the cerebellum deals with our balance, our coordination, and our muscle control. Interesting, wow. And our brainstem. Our brainstem deals with breathing, our blood pressure, deals with swallowing, and our heartbeat. It's just amazing what your brain does for you and the different areas of what it controls. Now, so that you can understand your brain a little bit better, look at the picture here on the screen, and it gives you right there in front of the face, it tells you a few other things. On the top, it tells you it's called the cerebrospinal fluid. So our brain floats in some fluid. It's, in some liquid. It's not just like stuck in our head. There's some liquid around it to protect it. Okay, so it's just floating. It's just some liquid, so there's not a whole bunch of space in there, as you can see, right? Now the next thing is called the dura. Now the dura is kind of like it's a protective, like a light sac that's around the brain and the fluid. Okay, and it protects it, but it's a really light sac. Okay, the next to that is the skull, right? And then it tells you where your blood vessels are in your brain. So study this really hard so you can see everything that your brain does. And remember those, let's remember the names of these brain parts, okay? Because guess what's coming next? Before I tell you what's happening next, let's talk about the hemispheres of the brain. Now the hemispheres are just two halves of the brain. That's it, two halves. Each half does something different though. Just how we talked about the brain parts, about the lobes and stuff like that, the hemispheres also do something different. Unbelievable, right? The left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, and the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Let's look at the screen. So the left brain deals with numbers, math, science, writing, speaking languages, analytical, logical stuff, wanting to know just the facts about stuff, right? And if you look at the right side of the brain, it deals with music and art, intuition, creativity, imagination. Now, both of these work together because they're connected, but we have one side of our brain that dominates the other just by a little bit. This is why there's left-handed people and right-handed people, okay? And there's some people that like using their left side of the brain more than they do the right side of the brain, and vice versa. Our brain is just so mysterious, don't you think? Quiz time! Woohoo! All right, so now you've learned your brain parts. You've learned what the brain parts do. Now, I'm going to give you hints on what that brain part does, and I want to see if you can tell me what the name of that brain part is. Look at your screen. Let's go to the blue shaded area. The blue shaded area, that part has your personality. What's the name of the brain part? What? That's right, frontal lobe. Good job, frontal lobe. Let's go to the pink part. Now the pink part is where your reading is at and your intelligence. What is it called? It's a little bit more difficult name. What is it? Very good. Parietal lobe. Very good. What about the yellow area? That one has your sight. What is it called? Occipital lobe. Very good. Now the green area, that part is where your emotions are at. What's it called? Temporal lobe. Very good. Now the lavender area, that part controls your balance. And it's not a lobe. What's the name of it? Cerebellum. Very good. Now the last brain part. That one has your heartbeat and your breathing. What is it? Very good, brainstem. Good job on the quiz. Let's talk about concussions. Now, a concussion is a brain injury. A concussion can happen when either something hits your head really hard or when you fall and hit your head on something, okay? And what happens in a concussion is that your brain, remember I told you your brain is floating in fluid, and your brain, when it moves, it hits against the skull. And when your brain is forced to hit the skull, the blood vessels and the nerve endings are torn and stretched and causes the brain to move even more. And depending how hard you were hit in the head or when you hit your head, might cause damage to your brain. What happens when you hurt your brain? Well, different things can happen depending on how hard you got hit in the head or how hard you hit your head when you fell. So let's talk about the brain parts and what can happen to them if they're damaged. When you hit if you hit the frontal lobe, sometimes you lose focus, or maybe you're not able to, to speak that well. If you hit the parietal lobe, you might have difficulty reading, and right here it says spatial awareness, which means knowing what's up or down, or what's from side to side, or what's on top or under. That's spatial awareness. Sometimes you have difficulty with that. If you hit the part where the occipital lobe is, then you might become blind or blurred vision. The temporal lobe, you might have problems with short or long-term memories. If the cerebellum is hurt, you might have slurred speech or difficulty in in balance. If you damage the brainstem, you might have difficulty swallowing or even breathing. But this is why we have this video, so that you know what happens when you don't wear your bike helmet or when you don't use seat belts. Your brain is an amazing body part. It really is. And you need to protect it. So let's look at the screen. It's not having, the toy soldiers around it, but it just shows you that you need to protect it. Always wear a helmet if you're riding your bike, a scooter, skateboards, or skates, okay? Wear a helmet when you're doing dangerous sports like football, baseball, okay? Wear your seatbelt. And you're thinking, how is that going to protect my brain? Well, you know what? When you don't wear your seatbelt, your body goes forward when there's an accident. So please wear your seatbelt. Never dive into shallow water or any type of water without knowing how deep it is, okay? And in the parentheses here, it says, your brain should let you know that this is not a smart thing to do, right? And our brain always has those little voices that tell us, hey, don't do that, okay? Listen to the voice inside your head. You know what? When something tells you it's not a good idea, listen to that voice, okay? Let's talk about bike helmets, okay? Look at the screen here. Here's some facts. More than any other sport, bike-related injuries are seen most in emergency rooms for kids between the ages of 5 and 14. 5 and 14. Do you fall in that area? Yes, you do. So that right there should tell you, I need to wear my bike helmet. Okay? Now, did you know that wearing a bike helmet can reduce brain injuries by 88%? 88%. Wow. Okay? That's just wow. You guys have seen professional bike riders, right? All the ones that I've ever seen wear a bike helmet. So please wear your bike helmet. Please, please, please. Look at the bottom one, the bottom fact. 45% of kids do not wear their bike helmet when they go off riding on their bike. Is that a good choice? No. I want you to be in the 88%, not in the 45%, okay? Please wear your bike helmet. Having a bike helmet isn't going to protect you if you don't know how to put it on properly. Remember the 2v1 rule. 2 fingers above the eyebrow, make sure that the lid touches the top of the fingers. A V, you should have a V at each side of the ear where the bike straps go. 1 means when you put on your chin strap and you snug it up, if one finger fits through the chin strap snugly, then it's good. Remember, don't have that chin strap too tight. 1 finger through, so 2V1, okay? Here's some safety tips for those kids that ride scooters, skateboards, or skates. A bike helmet is not meant for those things. You need to wear a multi-sports helmet to ride on scooters, skateboards, and skates. They're made a little bit different. And also, you want to wear protective gear when you're on scooters, skateboards, and skates. You want to wear wrist guards and knee pads and elbow pads because you're most likely to fall off of those things, okay? So please protect yourself when you're on something else other than a bike. What is the first thing you need to do when you get into a car? What is it? Yes, put on your seatbelt, please. Because you know what? Bad things happen when you don't use your seatbelt. Even the facts here. It says 57% effective in preventing traumatic and fatal brain injuries. Fatal brain injuries, okay? Most of the injuries they see in hospitals are people with brain and chest injuries, okay? Brain and chest injuries. People that don't wear their seatbelts in cars, even after the vehicle is stopped from a crash, because it's just a sudden stop, right? If you're not seatbelted in, you're going to keep going forward. And the first thing that goes forward is your head. And that's what causes brain injuries, okay? So even if you're just going up the street, to the store or something like that, or if you get into someone's car and they're not buckled up, you need to buckle up and you need to remind them to buckle up, okay? Because I promise you, seatbelts save lives. So when you get into a car, put on your seatbelt. I want to know, where do you sit when you get inside a car? Where do you sit? Raise your hand if you sit in the front seat. How many of you guys raised your hand? Quite a few of you, right? Okay, hands down. Here's another question. Raise your hand if you're over 13 years old. I don't think many of you guys raised your hand, right? Here's the reason why. If you're under the age of 13, you need to be sitting in the back seat. Under the age of 13, you're safer in the back seat. If you sit in the front seat, there's airbags in the front. Airbags are for when a car hits your car, and to protect the people in the front, which is mainly grown-ups. They're built to take care of grown-ups. When those airbags come out, they come out at 200 miles an hour in a millisecond. A millisecond is like the flap, one flap of a hummingbird. One flap. You know how fast hummingbirds are, right? So airbags come out really quick and they can hurt you. Sometimes they hurt grown-ups, but if a kid's sitting in front, a kid can get hurt pretty badly. So remember, if you're under the age of 13, you need to be sitting in the back seat. Booster seats are for big kids. That's right. They're only made for big kids. Little ones can't sit in it. Only older children, okay? Now, a lot of you I know don't use booster seats, but some of you aren't over 4'9", okay? And some of you don't weigh the weight limit to not be in a booster seat. Now, we have 4 pictures here on the screen, and we're going to talk about the incorrect pictures. So let's look at the first picture. Well, you see the boy's buckled up. Hey, he's fine. He's not sitting in a booster, he's sitting in the seat. But yeah, he looks okay to me. Look again. As you can see, it's a lap shoulder belt that he's using, right? So if you notice the shoulder belt, it's cutting into his neck, and that makes it really uncomfortable, and it makes it dangerous for in case of an accident because seatbelts tighten. And as you can see, the lap belt is over his tummy, and if a seatbelt is tightening, then it's going to hurt him right there in the tummy area, right? Let's look at the second picture. Well, since it was cutting into his neck right there, he decided to move the shoulder belt behind him. That's very dangerous because he's misusing the seatbelt. And what happens here is that in an accident or a sudden stop, he's going to go forward. And he's probably going to stay in the seat because of the lap belt, but he's going to get injured because that lap belt is over his tummy and there's nothing protecting him and stopping him from going forward. The third picture. It's not behind him anymore. Now it's underneath his arm. It's still not protecting him. He's still going to go forward, and the seatbelt is still over his tummy. This means that the seatbelt didn't fit him. But in order to make the seatbelt fit him, what do you think he got? That's right, look at the picture. He got a booster. He's sitting in a booster. It lifted him up to fit into the seatbelts better. And you know what? He's safer that way. So test yourself. Get into a car and see where the seatbelt fits on you. If it's cutting into your neck and it's going over your tummy, you need to be sitting in a booster. Now, if you're going to wear the seatbelt, if you're going to be using the seatbelt only, you need to make sure that you pass the 5-step seatbelt readiness test, okay? Make sure that the shoulder belt is between the neck and the curve of your shoulder, that your lap is on the pelvis, on your hips, okay? That your knees are bent over the edge of the seat, and that they can actually touch the floor. You want to sit up straight and no slouching. And you got to sit like that for the entire trip. Are you going to be able to do that? Well, if you're tall enough, if you're over 4'9", then you can. If you're under 4'9", you need a booster. Well, thank you for watching the video. And remember, take care of you. You're the best one to take care of you, right? Use a helmet whenever you ride your bike, on a scooter or a skateboard or skates. And please, buckle up every time you get into a car. Have a great summer.